Goa is globally recognized as a paradise of neon-lit beaches and endless nightlife. But behind the illuminated coastline lies a much older, decaying Portuguese history that tourists rarely see. 3 years ago, a 19-year-old named Samarth was sitting around a late-night bonfire with his friends, trading ghost stories. As the night wore on, the stories turned into a specific, targeted challenge. The dare was simple. Samarth had to trespass onto the grounds of the infamous The Mellow House, entirely alone in the dark, and bring back photographic proof from inside the property. Samarth laughed it off and accepted the dare. By treating the story as a joke, he set himself on a path toward the very location where the De Mello brothers' feud had supposedly ended in blood. The De Mello House is a tangible, isolated Portuguese colonial estate. Today, it stands as a ruined stone structure, slowly swallowed by heavy jungle overgrowth. Local historical records and folklore point to a specific conflict inside those walls. 2 brothers lived together in the house, but their relationship dissolved into a bitter, escalating feud over the property. According to the claims, that tension eventually snapped. A violent altercation broke out, ending when one brother drove a knife into the other. To hide the crime, the killer buried his brother's body deep in the dirt beneath a massive tree in the backyard. In paranormal theory, extreme acts of violence can create what's known as a trauma loop. The intense burst of energy and terror effectively breaks time in a localized spot, causing that single horrific moment to loop back over itself like a broken record. The surviving brother died shortly after the murder. Without resolution, their furious consciousnesses became locked in that exact geographic coordinate, condemned to replay their fatal fight indefinitely. This means the De Mello House acts as a supernatural crime scene. The violence of the past hasn't faded. It sits there, fully active, waiting for a catalyst to trigger the loop. As Samarth approached the property on his scooter, the environment reacted instantly. The ambient temperature plummeted, and the dense jungle foliage surrounding the estate fell into a sudden, unnaturally still silence. Stepping inside the decaying halls, he noticed bizarre visual anomalies. The peeling walls were covered in faded, distorted cartoon drawings, but their eyes had been entirely blacked out, giving the impression that the house itself was watching him. A heavy, oppressive weight settled on Samarth's chest, making it physically difficult to pull in a full breath. At the same time, the overwhelming stench of rotting meat flooded the corridor. To complete the dare, he raised his fully charged phone to snap a selfie. For a fraction of a second, the screen displayed 2 towering shadows looming directly behind him. Then, the device instantly died. These anomalies severed Samarth's connection to his tools and his surroundings. With a dead phone and failing senses, he was now completely isolated within the estate. Deep growls suddenly erupted from the shadows, followed by a sharp scream and the distinct voices of 2 men engaged in a violent argument. Samarth bolted for the exit, but as he reached the massive, bending tree in the backyard, the exact burial site described in the folklore, his legs locked up, leaving him completely paralyzed. Deep, frantic scratch marks are embedded into the bark of the twisted trunk, marks that resemble fresh human fingernail gouges. Forced to look down into the disturbed earth beneath the roots, Samarth experienced a terrifying psychological projection. Lying in the dirt was a rotting corpse, but it bore his own face. The 2 brothers materialized in the darkness, their bodies dripping blood from deep knife wounds. The corpse beneath Samarth reached up, grabbed him, and began pulling sharply into dark, loose soil, suffocating him in the grave. The danger of the De Mello House is that it demands participation. It forces its victims to not merely witness the historical fratricide, but to be physically absorbed into the burial dirt alongside the victims. By 5:30 a.m., the sun finally crusted over Goa, breaking the darkness. Samarth's panicked friends arrived at the property to search for him. They found him unconscious outside the house. He was half buried in the soil, his clothes stained, and his chest still fighting for shallow, strained breaths. When Samarth finally came to, he was met with immediate psychological isolation. He recounted the attack, the blood, and the grave, but his friends entirely dismissed his experience as an extreme panic attack or a hallucination. But as Samarth fled the property that morning, he gave the house one final glance. Standing perfectly still in the upper floor window, clearly visible in the daylight, the two brothers were watching him leave. Samarth left Goa that same day, but he never truly recovered. Whether you interpret his ordeal as a genuine encounter with restless ghosts or a severe fracturing of his own psyche, the result is the same. A piece of his mind remains permanently trapped inside the DeMello house.